are so many scary scenes in Halloween 2, it's almost impossible to pick the scariest one. The movie opens up with pure carnage taking place right after the events of the original film. Once again, we're back to the point of view shots, which put us right in the footsteps of Michael Myers, who we now know is no ordinary man.
I shot him 6 times. This guy, this man, he's not human.
He watches an old lady through a window in her kitchen as she makes her husband a sandwich. She goes to check on her husband, and we hear the news station on the television reporting about the recent murders in the town. Myers slips into their home through the back door, and we're left wondering if he's going to kill this poor lady and her husband. He grabs the knife she was using to make the sandwiches, watching her from behind as she's transfixed on the news report. He slips out the back door, clutching the knife, and finally, we can take a breath. This woman has no idea how close to death she was.
You don't know what death is.
Well, until she turns around, finding blood on her cutting board and letting out a blood-curdling scream into the night air. Unfortunately, this alerts one of her neighbors, who comes outside to check on things. This is when Myers takes notice of this poor, young girl who returns to her home to talk on the phone with her friend. She's told about the murders that have taken place, never imagining that the killer lurks within arm's reach of her. But a strange sound within her home grabs her attention. She spins around, dropping the phone, noticing the front door to her home is open. She cautiously investigates the strange noise, and suddenly... Then, while the next scene doesn't have anything to do with Michael Myers, let's not forget about this poor kid who bit into an apple with a razor blade in it. This is one of those scary scenes that will affect you in real life, as you'll never bite into another Halloween apple without thinking twice and inevitably checking it over. Then again, what kind of jerk gives out apples on Halloween?
They'll get what they deserve tonight.
Sketchy. Another thing that has absolutely nothing to do with Myers is that when Lori is transported to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, the one doctor on staff that she must entrust her care to is drunk.
Where's Dr. Mason?
He's been at the country club. I think he's drunk.
Oh, great.
With Lori holed up in the hospital, afraid to go to sleep, Myers is still aimlessly roaming the streets. We see a boy with a boombox, listening to the news reports about the murders, which are giving out information on where Lori has been transported, and BAM! He bumps into the Shape. Now, armed with this information, Myers begins making his way to HMH, while the iconic theme kicks into full gear and we realize that he's heading for Lori. That's who he really wants. Could you imagine being this poor girl, lying in a hospital bed, processing what's happened to you, and we know Myers is coming right for her? So scary. And then we see he's found his way to the hospital. Now, we have poor Mr. Garrett, the security guard of HMH, who goes off to see if he can figure out why the phones aren't working. Upon investigation, he finds a broken lock on the storeroom door. While slowly investigating the darkness, he hears strange noises around him as he realizes he may not be alone in the dark.
I think somebody broke into the storeroom.
He investigates further, finding more broken locks and more false scares, until eventually Myers does get him. And just listen to the metallic thud of that hammer. That's horrible, but after all the fake freakouts, not the scariest. Next, we have the sexy hot tub moment between Bud and Nurse Karen. When the water gets a little too hot, Bud goes to investigate, while Karen dries off and fixes her hair. We get to watch good old Bud get dealt with in the background. The poor thing is completely oblivious as her boyfriend dies and Myers enters the room behind her. He's not wearing a sheet, he's not hiding, he's going to kill her, and she has no idea he's even there. Instead, she thinks it's Bud behind her as she caresses the hand of Myers and proceeds to make plans for later, with whom she thinks is her boyfriend. When she turns around, finally seeing who it is, Myers forcefully pushes her head into the scalding hot water. Not only is this poor woman struggling for air, but her skin is being burnt off by the intense heat, until Myers is finished with her. I can't imagine. After finding Laurie Strode unresponsive, one of the nurse's aides is sent to find the drunken doctor we were introduced to earlier. The young lady calls out his name, but there's no answer. She finds him in his office, but he still doesn't answer her call. She turns his chair around to find that he's been murdered. She backs up in shock, and we get a horrifying reveal that she wasn't alone in the room before Myers slowly rams a needle into her temple. This is just one of those death scenes that make you cringe every time you see it. But it's still not the scariest. Laurie's first encounter with the Shape in this one is a contender for the scariest scene for sure. A nurse steps out, calling Laurie's name as she's surprised to find her in the hallway. Then, behind the nurse, out steps Myers and he stabs her with a scalpel so deep in her back, he's able to lift her off the ground, killing her. Then, he pursues Laurie, which is horrifying. You have to remember, this is a girl that has numerous unhealed wounds from the first encounter, just hours earlier. She has a cracked leg, cuts, bruises, and blurry vision. All of this while being chased by Myers, who only wants one thing: her death. Still, not the scariest scene though. All of the close encounters she has with Myers in the basement, seemingly cornered by him no matter which way she goes, it's like he could reach out and grab her at any moment. How about when Laurie is hiding out in the parking lot, but wants to get back inside the hospital where Dr. Loomis is now desperately searching for her? Myers shows up behind her and begins pursuing her while she pounds on the door, begging for someone to open it. It's so reminiscent of the scene from the original, it's amazing. But it doesn't stop there. Loomis gets Laurie inside before Myers is able to get her. He locks the door and they watch as he continues to walk right through it. He walked through the door. Loomis shoots him multiple times, once again, and the Shape falls to the ground. And, once again, he's not dead, but this time we get to see him rise after being shot so many times. And he kills a marshal, and yet again, the chase is on. This, my friends, is where we encounter the scariest scene in Halloween 2. Loomis runs with Laurie, trying to keep her safe. He locks them both inside of an operating room. Laurie cowers in a corner of the room as Loomis keeps an eye out for Michael before giving her a gun. He knows she'll need it. Myers pounds on the door, trying to get in, before eventually breaking through it. He literally broke through the door. Loomis tries to shoot him, but he's out of bullets, which results in him being stabbed. Now, Laurie is alone. The Shape gets ever closer, and he can't be reasoned with. Laurie picks up the gun, shooting him twice in the head. Blood pours out of his eyes, and we get this iconic shot. Now, he's a blind animal, intent on killing his prey. He begins slashing aimlessly with a scalpel, getting closer to Laurie. Loomis distracts him by turning on ether and oxygen tanks, so he begins slashing toward Loomis. Laurie does the same, which leads Myers back to her. He gets so close to hitting her, it's amazing. Every time I watch this, I think this is going to be the time he gets her. It's so close, and that, to me, is why it's Halloween 2's scariest scene.